Hi, welcome to my kitchen. Tonight we're going to make creamy potato soup. Before we get started, we're going to pull back our hair, get on an apron, and get our hands washed. Then we're going to make sure we've read our recipe carefully, check that we have all our ingredients and all our supplies, and get started. All right, so what we're going to need for creamy potato soup, we're going to need bacon. You want to start with raw instead of bacon bits. We want all the good fat and flavor out of that. You may want shredded cheese for a topping. This is optional. You're going to need a good medium-sized onion. You're going to need 4 cloves of garlic. You're going to need butter. You can use either salted or unsalted butter. You're going to need some sour cream. You're going to need some heavy cream. If you don't have heavy cream, you can sub in some half and half. You're going to need some milk. You're going to need a little bit of flour. You're going to need some chicken broth or chicken stock. And, of course, you're going to need potatoes. Now, I happen to be making this recipe even faster by using potatoes that I've already canned instead of starting with fresh potatoes. But you absolutely can start with fresh store-bought potatoes or homegrown potatoes and make the same recipe. Then in addition, you're going to need your seasonings. So whatever seasonings you like, I have here garlic, garlic powder, onion powder, and parsley. And I also have chili powder and paprika. In addition to this, we just need some salt and pepper. Now, we are going to need a good size, heavy bottom pot to make your soup in. I like to do soups in my Dutch oven. It's a really solid pot. It helps to make the heat even throughout everything. So I like to use a really good Dutch oven. You can use any kind of large saucepan. You're going to need a cutting board. You're going to need a good sharp knife. You're going to need ways to measure dry and wet ingredients. And then to make your soup creamy, an immersion blender is the best way to go. If you don't have an immersion blender, a regular blender or food processor will work. If you don't have that, go for your potato masher. Your potato masher can still break up the lumps once the potatoes have been cooked. So once we've made sure we have everything we need, it's time to get started. All right, so when it comes to getting this recipe to come together, a lot of the steps are going to move really quick. So we don't want to be trying to do things like cut up our onions or potatoes or garlic or even our bacon while we have anything else happening. So the very first thing we're going to do today is get these things taken care of. So we're going to start with prepping our ingredients. We're going to take our bacon and we're going to cut it into thirds. So we're going to make 2 cuts through our bacon and cut it into thirds. We're going to cut and peel and cut our onion. We're going to mince our garlic. And if you're starting with fresh potatoes, you're going to wash, peel if you want, and then cut your potatoes. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is get my bacon set up. So this is just a regular 12-ounce pack of bacon. It comes from the regular grocery store. This is nothing fancy, nothing special. Can you use the thick cut, anything like that? Absolutely. We just need some good bacon. And this bacon has a lot of marbling, has a lot of fat. And we do want this fat. It's what's going to really help make our recipe have the roux it needs to become very thick. So when we're working with meat, I've already touched this. My hands are going to need to be washed as well as this knife before I move around to other things in the kitchen. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a slice through here and a slice through here. I'm looking for roughly thirds. Do not have to be exact. Do not go breaking out a ruler. Roughly thirds. I want pieces that are smaller, okay, instead of a whole long piece of bacon. So now I have this. Now I need to stop and wash my hands after I've done with my bacon. All right, so my hands are washed. My knife handle is washed where I've been holding it. My cutting board is not. Normally, we need to be really careful with cross-contamination, that we don't take this. You can see a little bit of shine from that bacon fat. We want to be careful we don't cross-contaminate food. So whether you're working with things like meat, or if we're talking about somebody with an allergy, we need to be conscious of what's been on our surface, what's been on our knives, before we move on to the next ingredient. In this case, as soon as I've got that bacon cooked, the onion and garlic are the next things going into the same pot that bacon is in. So if this onion picks up a little bit of this bacon fat, it's not going to do me any damage. So I'm going to take my onion and I'm going to cut the blossom end off. And we can see that's here. When this was growing underground, this is where the leaves came out the top. So I'm going to cut the blossom end off, and then I'm going to cut the root end off. And you can see the roots here. Okay, I'm going to cut the root end off. Now your onion has a paper wrapping to it, and we want to get that taken off. And a lot of times people will sit and try to peel this off by their fingers, and you can be here all day. When you just cut these two ends off, it's going to make that come off a lot faster. So I'm just going to put it securely on my cutting board and take a good sharp knife with a good grip, and I'm going to come into about right there. Okay, so I'm going to just take that and I'm going to just cut that off. Then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to do the same thing, just a little bit right there at the end. Okay, now with the two ends off, I'm going to put it flat surfaced, either side, doesn't matter, and I'm going to cut straight down the center. So I'm making a cut right here. Flat surface, fingers out of the way, one cut right down. Now, I now have my onion cut in half, and most of this paper is going to come off really easy now because I have big clean edges for that. Okay, so there, the paper's off that one, and I've got all my paper off this. Okay, so that's a lot easier. Now, what do you do with all this? Okay, save your onion peels and put them, if they're clean and organic, you can dehydrate them and turn them into onion powder. You can put them into a Ziploc bag and put them in your freezer and eventually make a stock out of them. Now, because I had this one on the cutting board that had the meat, I'm not really comfortable doing all that. So this one is going to end up in my compost. All right, so save your scraps. No reason to throw them all out. Now, to cut my onion, there's all kinds of fancy videos you can see about how to cut onions. In the case of this soup, the onions aren't going to be visible in the final result. So we are more interested in just getting it chopped down into pieces, not spending a lot of time. We don't need perfectly cut onions. So when we look at an onion, it has layers. You can see all the different layers. So since it has layers, those are already differences. So we're going to lay it with the big cut center flat side down, and we're just going to come across and just make a few cuts. Okay, I'm going every, I guess that's about 1/4 of an inch. Whoops, I slipped on that one. Okay, so now I have these kind of wedgy looks. Now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to turn it 90 degrees, and I'm going to come across and cut it again. So now I have these chopped onions. This is a slippery onion. I have these onions chopped up. They're kind of rough. I'm looking at pieces about that big. It doesn't have to be perfect because these are going to get blended in. They're not going to be visible in my final result. They're not going in a salad or anything raw. I'm going to get rid of that piece. I don't like it. All right. So I'm going to take the other half and I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, I'm just coming down about every 1/4 inch here and making these nice slices. And once I have that, I'm holding it firm and turning it. So I was cutting across this side. Now I'm turning it, so I'm cutting across this side. So 90 degrees to my first cut. These are store-bought onions and they are certainly more slippery. Okay, so I've got this rough chopped up onion, and I'm just going to put this to the side. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my garlic cut up. When it comes to garlic, this whole thing made up of multiple pieces, this is a garlic bulb. The individual pieces that we can peel off, these are garlic cloves. So when something says 4 cloves, they do not mean 4 of these. they made 4 pieces off of here. When we look at garlic, the cloves can be all different sizes. So it can always be a little tricky with the recipe to worry about going by how many cloves. Go by how much garlic you like. So on that same bulb, this is 1 clove of garlic off that bulb. This is another clove of garlic I just pulled off the same bulb. So we can see they're nowhere near the same size. So if I'm thinking about this as 1, I might call these 2 together 2. So don't get too caught up. If you like a lot of garlic, use a lot of garlic. If you don't have to use as much. So we're going to get all of the cloves off this bulb. Down here at the bottom is a hard piece. That's the root end. That's where the roots were in the ground. And up at the top is a blossom end. And this is where the green was coming out of the dirt. Now, all this paper, just like the onions, all this paper needs to come off. You can just slide it right off. If you take this and just kind of push it around in your hand, you'll knock all these cloves loose really quick. Okay. All right, so we have all this paper. What do you do with the garlic paper? Same thing you do with the onion paper. Dehydrate it, wash it, dehydrate it, and make garlic powder. Throw it in a Ziploc and put it in the freezer and make stock with it, or put it in your compost. Don't throw it away. There's so many uses for all these things. All right, so I have all these little cloves of garlic, and they still have another layer of paper on them. So we can see this one. We can see it's starting to come off. So they still have a layer of paper on them. You absolutely can sit here and pull these off. If you don't have the patience for that and you use a lot of garlic, like I don't have the patience for that, try the Dollar Tree. Get something like this. Now, this one came from Amazon. This one came from Pampered Chef. But Dollar Tree, I've seen them at them. They're just silicone rollers. And you put your little clove of garlic right inside your roller. Put it down. Use your hand. Roll it around. And your peel comes off a lot easier. Okay, so these are great little tools. If you use, it does not work on my cutting board well, hold on. If you use a lot of garlic, this is a great way to get your garlic peeled very quickly. If you don't use much garlic, it's not worth grabbing one of these. But I grow our garlic in our garden, so we have a lot of garlic peeling to do. You can substitute the jar garlic in pretty much any recipe that asks for fresh garlic. Garlic in a jar comes with both oil pack and water pack. So pay attention which one you're getting. If I'm buying a jar of diced minced garlic, I'm going to buy the one in water, not in oil. It's up to you which one you want, but know that it is not near as strong or as potent, so you're going to need more of it. Don't be shy about dumping in a big old tablespoon of garlic if you're getting it out of a jar. It is much quicker and much easier, so don't feel bad about doing that. This one didn't peel very well. I'm going to give it another roll. All right, now, once we've got all these cloves of garlic peeled, we need to cut them. All right, so you're just going to take your knife, and we're going for very, very small. So putting my fingers away from the edge, the tip of the knife down solid on the cutting board, we're just shaving off little tiny pieces, okay? We're just wanting very thin little wedges. Once we have all these thin little wedges, we're going to come back and cut them pretty much in half and then turn them and mince them, okay? Again, if you use a lot of garlic, this is going to take forever. You can get something like this. So if you have one of these in the drawer at your house, or you've been in your mom's house and you say, what is this thing she's got? This is for mashing garlic. You take your clove of garlic and you put it down. Take this straight down on top of it. And I now have this minced garlic. I've got another one. Okay, this one's a nice little tool. You put your little bit of garlic right in here. So if you've seen one of these in your mom's house and you said, what is this thing? Put your garlic in there. The little flat piece right here falls down right on top of it. You give that a squeeze, and all your garlic comes out minced. Okay? So whether you're going to do this with a knife, whether you're going to put it through a masher like this, or whether you've got a rocking grater, any of these ways, we just need to get all of our garlic processed. All right, and then the last item you need to get ready is your potatoes. I realize you probably don't have canned potatoes in your house unless you're already used to canning. What potato you use for this soup is up to you. There are different types of potatoes that make different kinds of ingredients, better ingredients. Some potatoes are better for baking, some potatoes are better for roasting. Honestly, when it comes to the soup, the creamier white potatoes, like a red skin potato or a yellow skin potato, are going to give you a nice creamy soup. I happen to like the big old russet potatoes in just about everything. They are probably cost-wise the most efficient, and I did these back in November around Thanksgiving when they put potatoes on sale. I canned them up, but just so you can see, I am leaving the skins on these. If you do can, that is Rebel canning. Potato skins aren't supposed to be canned. But what you're going to do is you're going to take your potatoes, if you're using fresh ones, and you're going to scrub them. I don't mean wet them. I mean scrub them. Scrub them good. They grow underground, and if you're using the skin, you're eating the part that's set in the dirt. So you're going to peel them, scrub them really good. Then you have a choice to peel them or not peel them. But we're looking for just a chunk. So when you cut these the same way you cut your onions, you're just chunking. So we're going to lay our potato out long ways. We're going to lay our potato out. We're going to cut straight down the center and then chop, 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 chop. 4 or 5 chops, okay? So we're just looking for chunks. They don't have to all be exactly the same size. We want them relatively the same size so they cook in about the same amount of time. If we have really big pieces and really little pieces, the little ones will be overcooked before the big ones are done. So we're looking for roughly the same size pieces throughout all of our potatoes. All right, so now we're going to move on to actually getting this recipe put together. So we're going to start by getting our large, heavy bottom pan, in this case my Dutch oven, onto a burner, and we're going to take our bacon. Now I've got it wrapped in paper towels when I picked it up so that this time I'm not touching it. So I'm just going to take all this bacon, I'm going to dump it into there, and then I'm going to turn this on to medium high. If your burner works by numbers, if they're all numbered, we're looking for basically a 7. So more than medium, less than the top number of 9 or whatever you've got. So mine goes from 2 to high. So I'm going with a 7, a medium high. So we're going to put our bacon in. We're going to let it get started getting cooking. And we're going to just give it a stir a little bit of once in a while. All right, so my bacon is in the pot. It is cooking now, and I have used my spoon to separate all the layers out into individual pieces, and we're just going to let this go ahead and start to cook until we get it nice and brown and crisp. All right, so while my bacon is crisping behind me, I want to talk to you a little bit about the butter. So butter comes in salted and unsalted. If you're using salted butter in a recipe, you can go ahead and scale back the additional salt you add. If you're using unsalted, add a little more salt. Some baked goods will say only unsalted butter. If you don't have it, just leave out a little bit of the salt from the recipe. When it comes to measuring, butter is really convenient because on the side of the stick, it lists for you measurements. So we can see here 1 tablespoon, 2, 3, 4. So we want 4 tablespoons. We're literally going to cut right down this line and have 4 tablespoons of butter. Butter sticks, this size, butter sticks, come 4 in a box. That box is a pound. Therefore, this is a 1/4 pound or a 1/2 cup. So 1 box of butter is 1 pound. 1 stick is 1/4 pound. 1 stick is a 1/2 cup. Right? So measuring butter is really, really easy because we have these little marks right here. You don't have to try to measure it into a glass measuring cup, smush it and mush it. Just cut along the lines. All right, our bacon is cooking. You can see it starting to really render down the fat. I don't know if you're catching it, but it is spitting fat back up into the air. So you want to stay away from it. But you want to stir it every once in a while. Just move it around so we get all the sides cooked. But you do want to stay back. It is spitting hot fat everywhere. All right, our bacon is still cooking. You can see that it's starting to get crisp, but we still have some real tender spots. So we're going to keeping this going until it's pretty much all crisped up. You see all this fat is forming in the bottom, all the liquid down here. And you see all the brown in the pan. That's okay. That is flavor, and we want that. All right, this bacon is looking done. So we're just going to get this out of the pan, and we're going to put it onto a plate. We're not going to take the fat. We're going to keep the fat in the pan. And I need to move a little quicker here. All right, so I'm getting all the bacon out, and we're going to leave it to drain, and we're going to leave the fat in the pan. Now, I'm going to pause you just a minute. All right, so now I've got my fat in the pan. I am turning my heat down to medium, and I'm going to add my butter. Expect it to splatter. With my butter now in my bacon fat, I'm going to add in my onions. Now, take a look what the onions look like before they go in. Okay, they're solid and they're pretty white. So we're going to put these in, and this is going to cook down until these onions are mostly cooked. They're going to get translucent, clear, and they're not going to be firm. They're going to get soft and limp. And that's going to take probably 3 to 5 minutes. So we're just going to cook these onions right here in all this yummy bacon dripping. And I've got my heat turned down to medium now to a 5. I don't want to burn any of this. And I'm just going to keep stirring until this is cooked. All right, now my onions have been cooking. A lot of this bacon brown is off the bottom. And we can see the onions are starting to become clearer, more translucent, and they're definitely softer. So our onions are pretty much cooked, and we're going to add in our garlic. Now, garlic burns really quick. So we want to make sure that when we get our garlic in, we're ready. So I'm going to take all that garlic. It's all going in. And I'm just going to get this mixed in. So our garlic really only needs maybe 30 seconds to a minute of heat to get really aromatic, release all that good flavor into this mix, but not much more than that because garlic will burn. It is a sugar content in it that will burn. All right, so we have now our garlic mixed in, and we're going to take and add to this our half cup of flour. Now, you may have heard people talk about the right way and wrong way to measure flour. That really is a thing. There is a right way and wrong way to measure flour. That more goes into baked goods. In this case, I just have a half cup of flour here. I'm not worried about it too much, but I'm going to take this half cup of flour and I'm going to sprinkle it over the top of everything. I'm not just going to dump it. So, kind of sprinkling it across all the surface. And now I'm going to start working this in. It's going to create a thick, pasty kind of substance. And this is when all that good brown off the bottom from the bacon, you just scrape that in with your wooden spoon. And now we're going to keep cooking this for about 2 minutes. Okay, now we've got our flour well cooked, and we're going to start adding in our liquids. I am going to switch from my wooden spoon to a whisk. So when we see an instruction say to whisk, that's this utensil. I like to use a whisk here. I didn't even mention that at the beginning. I apologize. A wooden spoon would still work, but for me, I like a whisk. So I'm going to take my liquid. Now I have 6 cups of chicken broth, and I'm going to add this in. And I'm going to whisk it very well. Make sure I incorporate all of it. And then I'm going to add another. So this is 6 total. That was 3 cups and 3 cups in those jars. And then I'm going to add in my dairy. So this I have in here measured, my 2 cups of milk and my 1 cup of heavy cream. So I'm going to whisk as I slowly pour. Let me see if I can get that right direction for you. I'm slowly pouring and whisking. Okay, so now I have all my liquid ingredients added, and this is our soup base. So we're going to get this really well. You can feel through the bottom. You're feeling for any of that flour mixture that might be clumpy still. Most of it should be well incorporated. So we're going to turn the heat back up now to medium high. So I'm going back for a 7. We're going to turn this heat up and we're going to whisk consistently until we get, whoops, I just made a mess. We're going to whisk consistently until we get a nice thick bubble. All right, now that our sauce here has started to really thicken, you saw how thin it was earlier. I was sloshing it over. It's really getting nice and thick now. As it's really getting to this thick point, I'm going to go ahead and add in all of my potatoes. I'm going to dump these right out of the jar. Don't burn yourself splashing them in. And all this I have at the bottom is just more butter and such. So you want somewhere around 3 pounds of potatoes. Usually when you're buying potatoes in the store, they'll come in 3 pounds, 5 pounds, or 10-pound bags. So these are about a little more than a pound each, these jars. They're quart jars, so you would think 2 pounds. But if you weigh the final product, it's a little over a pound, about 1.33 pounds, 1.25 pounds. So I'm going to use 3 jars. So that's probably right around 3.5, 4 pounds total of potatoes. All right, so I've got all my potatoes in here. And now I've got them all mixed in. I'm just going to stir them around really well. I'm going to stir it frequently, but not consistently, not constantly, rather. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave this here and let it start to cook until those potatoes are really soft. Now mine, being canned, are already soft. This is not going to take very long. But what you'll want to do is, as you're cooking this, when you think you're about done, you're going to just take a fork. If you can pierce one of those chunks of potatoes real easily with a fork, they are cooked enough. All right, so now I want to get this bacon that we cooked earlier ready to use as a topping. This is really super crisp bacon, so I don't have to do anything with it other than take it and crunch it up in my hand. And I'm going to get bacon bits, basically the same as you'd get in a bag. Okay, so remember, this is why we're always keeping our hands nice and clean. You don't need any fancy equipment. Just use your hands. Crumble this up. We're going to get this ready to go in as a topping. And we're going to put about 1/2 of this right into our soup, and then the rest we'll use for people to put on their plates. All right, while I'm waiting for that soup, I'm going to go ahead and get a loaf of bread ready. So I have a nice loaf of sourdough sandwich bread. I already started cutting, but I'm just going to cut off some nice little pieces of this, and we can toast them, or we can put them fresh into dipping. You absolutely could take your sandwich slices here, your bread slices. If you were to take these and then cut them into thirds, they make great dipping sticks for a soup. So I'm just cutting up a few slices here so we have those. So anything we're going to need to do to plate our soup, we're going to do while those potatoes cook in the soup behind us. So if you're going to serve out any bread, if you want to get your toppings, set your table, now is the time to do it. And then don't forget to occasionally give your soup a good stir. All right, so our potatoes are ready. You'll know they're ready. Like I said, you're going to pierce it with a fork. So if you can take a fork and put it easily through a potato, and it goes right through, breaks apart like that, this potato is soft and ready for blending. Now I'm going to use an immersion blender. An immersion blender goes right down into the pot. You have to be careful that it doesn't slosh and burn you, but this is a lot safer than taking hot soup and putting it into a blender. If you don't have an immersion blender, you can scoop some of this out and use it. Now, how much of this you blend depends on your preference. If you want a really thick, chunky, big pieces of potato soup, you're not going to blend too much. If you want about halfway creamy and halfway thick, blend about half the big chunks of potatoes. I'm going to blend this totally and make it very creamy. So I'm going to sink my immersion blender in, and I'm just going to blitz, means just quickly turn it on and off so I don't clog it up with potato. Once I have most of these big pieces done, I can actually just start running it, moving it through the pot and getting it all incorporated. All right, I finished blending. I have a really thick soup now. I'm going to put in about a half a cup of sour cream. I'm going to put in about half of my bacon bits. I'm going to stir these in, and now is the time to season my soup. So what seasonings you use is totally up to you. Go with things that you know you and your family like. If you like it super garlicky, add some more garlic powder. If you want it spicy, add some chili flakes. This is up to you and your personal taste at this point. All right, so into my soup, I'm going with a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm going with a half a teaspoon of chili powder. And I'm going with about a teaspoon of parsley. Okay. And my handy dandy assistant is giving me my salt and pepper. So I'm going to put my salt and pepper directly in. Now I don't want to really hold it over this pot and grind my salt in because this humidity is going to clog this up. So I'm just going to do this into my hand and add it in. That's taking too long, so I'm going to put, that's about a half a teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to do the same with the pepper. And I'm going to get that mixed in. So now we're going to let this cook for about 3 to 5 minutes. Basically, we want time for these seasonings to really get into the soup and make good flavor. And then we're going to taste it. And if we think we need more salt or more pepper, we'll add those seasonings. If we add more seasonings, we'll add another 1 to 2 minutes of cooking time. All right, so at this point, this soup is ready to go. We can see it's got great color from the different seasonings. You get the little bacon specks in there. You got some parsley, the cracked pepper. It's got great seasonings, great color, and it's got great flavor. So this is ready to go to the table. Take it to the table and serve it with some shredded cheddar, sour cream, bacon bits, whatever you want for your toppings. You're going to just serve it right at the table, ready to go.